Hello, welcome back to Angela Does Horror. Today we are talking about The Rule of Jenny Penn. It is a new Shudder movie that recently had a limited release in theaters, but it will be releasing all over the place. No, it'll be releasing on Shudder on March 28th. So if you are a Shudder subscriber, we're going to talk about some things. I'm going to avoid spoilers. Also going to kind of give it a rating system and just kind of go into my thoughts about it. Let me just read a short synopsis. Recovering from a stroke at an assisted living facility, a judge encounters a psychopathic patient who uses a hand puppet to abuse fellow residents. They really didn't market this movie at all. I had never heard of it. A friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want to go to the movies? Do you want to see The Rule of Jenny Penn?" And I was like, "What the fuck is that?"
What the fuck?
And she said, "Oh, it's some doll movie where John Lithgow terrorizes people with a doll."
What the fuck?
Went and saw it, went in completely cold. I had never seen a trailer. I had never even heard the title of the movie. I just knew John Lithgow plays a villain in it, and I've loved his villain characters in the past. In Dexter, he was, what was it, Cliffhanger? No. Blowback? What's the name of that movie? It doesn't matter. John Lithgow's great, so I was in. This movie stars Geoffrey Rush and John Lithgow. I didn't know that Geoffrey Rush was in it until I saw him on the screen, and it was such a pleasant surprise. I've never really seen him involved in horror. Always exciting to see some kind of new blood, especially when you know that they're really good actors. And yeah, this movie definitely delivered in the acting department, hands down 100%. I mean, how could it not with those two leads?
Where there are no lines, hyenas roar.
The movie opens with Geoffrey Rush's character is a persnickety judge. He's on the stand. He is issuing a judgment on, it appears to be like a child abuse case. The man that is being judged in this case is the boyfriend of a mother who was abusing her children, and she's sitting in the peanut gallery just, no, thank you, to the judge. And he shuts that shit down really quick. He says, "You are complicit in this, ma'am. You knew that this man was abusing these children." And in the process of him getting this statement out, he starts to suffer a stroke. And the way that this movie, the cinematography shows that the stroke is happening is really cool, really interesting. It is exactly what I feel like having a stroke would look and feel and sound like. So props there on that, really good. And in this opening scene, we really get a good look at like the character of this judge. He does not suffer fools, you know, he is self-assured, he's direct. So all of that just in the opening scene. We cut to, he's now in a wheelchair at an assisted living facility sometime after his stroke. He is recovering there. Now, this assisted care facility, it's kind of equal parts rehab center for older people with, you know, like stroke symptoms and different things like that. But also it is like a straight up old folks home in some regards too. Like there are old people who are there who their families have put them there and they just live there now and that kind of thing. So you have a mix of patients who are both, you know, fully mentally capable, bodily capable even, but maybe their legs don't work anymore, or I have a bad hip and I'm just here for a short time and that kind of thing. So Geoffrey Rush, he is just there for a short term. And you can tell that he really views himself above the rest of the people in this facility. He's been a guy who for most of his life has been, you know, successful, probably wealthy, intelligent, and he just feels that he's sort of above this place, that he's better than this place, he's on his way out, this is just like a hurdle, and once he gets over this, and I think a lot of it too, you start thinking about like the pride of a character like this and the fact that like, I'm fine, like I can do it by myself, and that's part of, you know, sort of the horror of aging as well. There will come a time, if you're lucky, if you're one of the lucky people, there will come a time when your body and your mind starts failing you, and that has got to be a really scary reality to face, you know, especially if you're somebody who's been really independent and successful and, you know, self-reliant your entire life. I will say this movie does a really good job of really setting the scene, the setting of the old folks home is a good backdrop for this tale of essentially bullying to take place. They really use the idea of aging, which is something that a lot of people have an innate fear of, of getting older and not being yourself anymore. That's always kind of a constant fear that people have, even though we are constantly aging all the time. It's an inevitable aspect of life, and yet there is an element to that that is really scary. And I like that this movie uses the old people there to really, I don't know, just assist in the psychological horror of this movie. A lot of times in horror, and I know I've said in the past, like, old people are gross. Old people are gross. As a joke. A lot of horror movies fall into this, I think is kind of a messed up trope where, they use older people in horror movies, but instead of using them as real, genuine characters to drive the plot forward, they use them almost as, oh, old people are gross and scary. Like they're the horror element of the movie, and that feels kind of icky. I felt like this movie did a really good job at, showcasing the process of aging and how that can be, a really scary thing, while also giving the people there like a heart and a soul, and they're not just props, you know? So good job there, movie. While Geoffrey Rush's character is there at the facility, he encounters a man played by John Lithgow, who uses a doll named Jenny Penn, like a hand puppet, kind of looks like this, to essentially bully and terrorize all of the residents in this old folks facility. Now, the way that he goes about doing this is so fucked and bizarre and interesting and just really cool. If you like bizarre, strange kind of movies, I would definitely recommend this. I don't think this movie is necessarily for everyone. I think there is a possibility that if you're not into this type of movie, you would go into this and possibly be disappointed. I mean, not in the acting or anything, but just maybe in the overall vibe of the movie. It is very strange. I like movies like that. I like the weird. I like the strange. I'm for it. But while Geoffrey Rush is there and he's, using his physical therapy to try to regain control of his hand and his legs and stuff, one of the doctors recommends, puppet therapy. And there's a group of patients there who use puppets in their therapy. And I think my pizza is done. One second. Thank you. That's gonna be good. Okay. So it's recommended that he use puppets in his therapy, but of course, because his pride and his ego is very large, he's a very important judge. He's not going to be doing puppet therapy, absolutely not. So John Lithgow is kind of using the puppet under the guise of he's using it for therapy. He kind of puts on this front like, maybe he's not all there. He plays kind of coy and just not necessarily all with it to fool the staff there, and in doing so is able to basically reign supreme over all of the people in this facility, and one of which is Geoffrey Rush's roommate, who he doesn't want to have. Geoffrey Rush's roommate is a former soccer star named Tony, and he is there. He has a bad hip. And, he's a totally normal guy. He just has a bad hip. And for whatever reason, Geoffrey Rush has really honed in on that Tony makes a great victim. So in the middle of the night, he comes into their room and he uses Jenny Penn to just torture and psychologically torment this poor man. And at one point, Geoffrey Rush is even saying, you have family. I don't have family. Why don't you do something to get help? And he says, no, I can't. He is just in victim mode. And Geoffrey Rush really views this as, pretty sad. But at the end of the day, he's not doing anything to help him either. He's not standing up for him. There is kind of a awesome, funny thing that John Lithgow does where he's holding Ginny, and the way that he begins kind of the torture session is he holds the doll in Tony's face and he says, "Who rules?" And he makes him say, "Jenny Penn." And then he says, "Okay, then kiss her asshole." And so if this is the puppet, he just kind of flips his wrist around like that and he makes them, oh, I'm sorry, it's lick. He's like, "Then lick her asshole." And flips his wrist around and makes his victims lick his wrist as if it's Jenny's butt.
Who rules? Jenny Penn. That's right.
Just a stupid detail that I enjoyed. Also worth mentioning, they gave John Lithgow these crazy blue contacts that make him look like he has doll's eyes. So that's just another kind of unsettling feature. They also gave him really jacked up teeth, which also just kind of makes him more just grimy, because when he's talking, there's spittle flying out from his nasty teeth. And it just really kind of rounds out the character, I think, in a fun way. As time goes on, John Lithgow does start to target the judge more. He's kind of seeing where the boundaries are, you know? It becomes this cat and mouse game between these two characters, kind of like a spy versus spy for a good middle portion of the movie. It's really fun to just kind of see the back and forth between those two. They're just constantly trying to get at each other and eventually kill each other, and it becomes a very chaotic, topsy-turvy sort of situation that oftentimes involves a lot of the other residents of the facility. There's an awful scene with a catheter that is hard to watch. It's not gory. You don't see anything. It's just, if you know how catheters work, it is, There is a scene where John Lithgow is about to sexually assault one of the old female residents there, and she's incapable of defending herself, which also brings up kind of another point of this whole bully situation that's going on, is that a lot of these people, you know, they are the most vulnerable people. They can't defend themselves either physically or mentally. They don't know what's happening. And it really shows the just demented nature of John Lithgow's character, is that he's found the most vulnerable people and he is getting power, just exerting his Jenny Penn's rule over these people, and it's really sick and twisted, but really fun to watch. So take that however you will. There's a great scene where, you know, a lot of the residents are dancing on the floor and just dancing to some music, kind of like the staff is trying to get them some physical activity or something. And John Lithgow just completely dominates the dance floor, just completely takes over the space, because he's not aware of the people around him. Here he is aware of them, but he doesn't care, and he's just taking what he wants, which is a really good kind of visual metaphor for what's happening throughout the movie. Now, I won't go into how this movie ends, or, you know, what kind of happens leading into the climax, because I don't want to spoil it in case people still want to see it. It hasn't released on Shudder yet, so I know a lot of people still haven't seen it, so I'm going to stay tight-lipped about that. I do feel that the ending was a bit anticlimactic, just because we were ramping up so hard there. It did kind of feel like a little like, okay, like I kind of wanted a little more from the ending. But that being said, I think that overall, the movie is great. I really liked it. Let's talk about scoring. So just overall score, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. That feels good. Yeah, a 7 out of 10. An argument could be made that this isn't technically a horror movie. Now, it is labeled as a horror movie, and there are horror elements in it, for sure. You know, I almost saw it more as a black comedy thriller by the end of it. So as far as like scariness, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 10. It's not going to keep you up at night, even if you're somebody that, you know, gets really scared at movies easily. I don't think you're going to lose any sleep over this one. But let's give it a uniqueness score, and I'm going to say uniqueness, 9 out of 10. I have not seen a movie like this ever before. I was really racking my brain trying to think of a movie that I could compare it to. And I honestly, I couldn't come up with anything. It is very genre bending. It is very much doing its own thing. And I like that about it. It's fresh. The acting is incredible. I honestly couldn't picture two other people doing it. I think if you had had two less talented actors, even just by a smidge, this movie wouldn't have worked. And man, they're just a testament to their acting. If you watch it even just for the acting performance, you will be happy at the end of the day. It is coming to Shudder on March 28th. It is still in theaters. It had a very limited release, like I said. So if it's, playing in your town, I recommend seeing it. But if you want to wait, save your money, watch it when it comes to streaming, I think that is probably the move for most people. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Who rules? Lick her asshole. Lick it. Oh, one more thing, just before I go. John Lithgow gets naked in this movie, so you're definitely gonna want to see that.